I'm Channy Peters, a member of the Democratic Alliance here in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. And joining me today is Bob Marshall, who is running for re-election in House District 43. Bob, thank you so much for coming by and spending a little time out of your very busy schedule right now.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So Bob, you have been representing us in Highlands Ranch for almost 2 years now. And in that time, you have done, I think, more solo public town halls than any other state legislator. So that is an impressive record of transparency and accountability, not to mention the enormous amount of time it must take to keep your constituents informed. We really appreciate that because it's more than just understanding the issues, but it's understanding why you have taken the positions that you've taken. So we really thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I've actually had more town halls than all the other Douglas County legislators combined. It hasn't been something that's been normal in DougCo, and the fact that I've done it, I know, has pushed a few of them because people have asked them, why don't you do town halls like Bob? And they've done some. I also try and keep them in accessible places, like what Senator Van Winkle had one like 4 years ago, and he had it at a gun shop and a gun range, and not everyone feels comfortable doing that. But when I do them too, I try and have two in the same week, one on a weekday evening and one on weekend afternoon, so everyone has an opportunity to come. Because again, I've had conservatives and progressives come very angry to my town halls about something I'd done. But once I explain what I did, they're usually pretty good with the reasoning, and they're like, yeah, well, I understand how you did that, even if I still disagree, because I'm real blessed with the constituents I have. They're pretty reasonable, and I couldn't be the representative I am if I didn't have the constituents I do.
Well, so taking it to the next step then, what do you feel is the most gratifying or successful accomplishment that you've had in the last legislative session or in the last 2 years?
Well, there's actually quite a few, but I guess two that would come to mind immediately is, well, actually maybe three, but Amendment G, which is for the individual unemployability veterans, it's a ballot measure, it's a constitutional change, and it's not a huge, it affects maybe 3,400 people, but it's devastating for the 3,400 that don't have this benefit. And if I knew how big a deal it was to get the Constitution amended, I may not even have started the process, but most have all this money and special interest groups behind them. I just did this on my own, and we wound up getting it out of the House, Senate, and every committee hearing unanimously, even though,
wow,
yeah, not a single vote against it. So that was kind of a big deal. I'm also real proud about the senior tax credit exemption we got through, or senior tax credit, the refundable credit, because if you're over 65 and you've been living and own your home, you get a property tax rebate. But those who rent, and there's a lot of seniors who rent their home for 20, 30 years until they die, they get no benefit. So I'm glad we were able to put this through so it's about equivalent. I'm really big about fundamental fairness. I don't like making special carve-outs, but when we do, we can't leave out people. You got to treat people equally, and I just didn't see that as being equal. And that was another one. I got out of the Finance Committee unanimously. All the Republicans voted for it because I was able to make arguments to them that made sense.
You've been a very effective legislator who has been able to pass a number of bills on a bipartisan basis with bipartisan support. So in addition to those two, are there others that you want to mention?
Well, there'd actually probably be almost too many to mention, because 7 of my 8 bills last session got out of their committee hearings unanimously.
Wow.
And the one that didn't had bipartisan support. And I actually got a House resolution through, which was to be referred to out of the committee with more Republican votes than Democrat votes. But the Democratic vote that helped me get it through was the most progressive member on the panel, and my closest friends and colleagues actually down there are the progressives. A lot of people are shocked by that. I'm actually shocked by it, but I'm just really big on good governance and transparency, and a lot of their stuff dies behind closed doors. And a lot of those bills I brought that were very good bills did not get made into law because leadership would just hold them in appropriations or not allow them to go forward, even though I'd already, if they had allowed them to go to the floor, I would have been able to get them off the floor too. So I work very well with my individual colleagues and in small groups with the committees, doing what I think is best for Highlands Ranch in Colorado. So, and my progressive colleagues understand that too. They've even told me, I've been able to ask them to change bills without even doing an amendment because they know I'm asking for my constituents, not special interests.
Well, Bob, you have a number of times I have heard you say that your three topmost priorities are public education, public health, and the environment. So could you give us an idea of what legislation you have worked on to move those priorities forward?
Well, they're actually public safety was number one, public education and the environment. And I got down there, and those areas are actually been dominated by other legislators, and you have to specialize to get anything done, really. But in public safety, I actually pulled a bill title to change the auto theft bill, and I was working with it with a Republican legislator who was a former police officer. We were working on it for 3 weeks, and then they took it away from me and gave it to a senior legislator to run it. But that bill's been credited with reducing auto thefts in the last year. It was enacted by 45% statewide. Denver Gazette, actually, the conservative daily, did that. For public education, I was the first legislator ever to get out of committee unanimously the teacher tax credit to pay the teachers for their out-of-pocket expenses. We know this has been going on since I was in kindergarten. And no one takes care of it. They're like, well, the district should pay them all this. I'm like, no. And we set it up so they would have professional respect. And people were shocked I was able to even get it out of committee, but I got it out unanimously because I was able to convince the Republicans to give up requiring private schools to also get it. So it was just all the public schools that have the 4 certified teachers.
Well, what are your legislative priorities for this current session?
Well, those are still my 3 things that are closest to my heart, but I got down there and I've kind of become 3 specialties in good governance, taxes, and veterans issues. Veterans issues because of my background, and I actually didn't want to get pigeonholed as the veterans guy, but I got down there and I'm an expert in those areas, and so I see things nobody else sees and takes care of it, like the Amendment G issue. Taxes, I have a huge tax background, and I've come to pretty much be a dominant force on the finance committee because of that. And in fact, this last summer, I was asked by the National Conference of State Legislators to be one of only 4 panelists of legislators from across the United States to present at the conference. The other 3 were all the chairs of their respective finance committees. So that was a big feather in the hat, especially for a first-term legislator. And then good governance, I think a lot of people know about that. I brought the vacancy committee bill, I brought the county commissioner bill. I challenged the sunshine law violations that have been going down there for years. So good governance is a big thing because it's important that people trust their government. And I've failed on a lot of those things so far, but people have said I've raised the bar just by bringing those, and just my presence down there kind of raises the bar for how we operate down there, because I'm willing to raise my hand and even with my own party say, is this the right way to do things? And and it's just like all those Stanford studies that, when something morally wrong is going on, and most people know, but they don't want to be the first person to raise their hand and say what's going on. So when I do, then I get many colleagues who back me up and say, yeah, this is kind of flaky. So,
well, in the last 30 seconds that we have, are there maybe 1 or 2 things that you would like voters to take away from this conversation we've had?
Well, I guess the big thing is, I'm really big about good governance, and I'm really big about representing my district, and that makes me kind of an old-style politician. I'm a weird platypus down there. I say platypus. People would call me a unicorn, but I'm not that good looking. So, I'm a strange animal. And it makes it difficult. I'm in the middle, I get buffeted, but Highlands Ranch is in the middle, and I think I represent the median voter in Highlands Ranch very well. And I've been extremely blessed with my Democratic supporters because they only make up 21% of the registered voters of Highlands Ranch, and they've been willing to put me forward as the moderate, reasonable voice that should represent Highlands Ranch, even though I may be a little more to the right of a lot of the progressive Democrats who want me to vote like a Denver or Boulder Democrat. But we're not in Denver or Boulder. I represent Highlands Ranch.
Well, Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to come in today and have this conversation. I hope this is helpful to the voters who have now gotten their ballots, and I wish you the best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.